My name is Peter Höing, and I'm chair of the German Studies Department here at Emory in Atlanta. And I welcome everyone, and I'm most happy, of course, to see my colleagues, but also most happy to see the students joining us for our discussion today with Didem Uca and Sheri Hagen. And I will first introduce the two discussants, and then I'll leave the floor up to them. They will discuss matters around the film that you hopefully all watched, of den zweiten Blick. And then we will have, after about 35 minutes or so, open up the discussion for you to send questions to the chat room. So it is my pleasure to introduce to you, for those who don't know her, our new colleague, Didem Uca. She's our latest and newest assistant professor in the German Studies Department here at Emory. We are very happy to have her. She finished her PhD in 2019, about a year ago, and she wrote a thesis that made her very attractive for us because we were looking for a position that deals with diversity and the multiracial society that Germany has become over the last decades. And her PhD thesis is titled Coming of Age on the Move, Young Travelers, Migrants, and Refugees in 20th and 21st century German literature. She comes to us not straight from UPenn, where she finished her PhD, but from Colgate University, where she joined faculty last year, and we were very proud and are happy to have her now snapped away to us. And she's a very active woman and colleague. Among other things, I only mentioned two things, and that is she just finished organizing the conference for women in German that took place the last 2-3 days, I believe. And she's also active in a group or caucus here in the United States called Decolonization, Diversity in the German Curriculum. And that makes her a perfect partner with Sheri Hagen, our special guest, joining from Berlin. And Sheri Hagen was born in Lagos, Nigeria, but grew up in Hamburg and has been for the past 25 years, I believe, in Berlin. And as we just heard, is going back and forth between Hamburg and Berlin. And she's an actress and got her education as an actress in Vienna. That's very important to us. We have a summer study abroad program in Vienna. And then she was an actress in Berlin at the Vagantenbühne, but also at Ballhaus Noninstraße in Berlin. And she's known for a wider audience in Germany, not because of these two stages in Berlin, but really for TV and films. If I counted correctly, it was in over 40 films that she has been part of. And then finally, and last but certainly not least, she is herself a filmmaker, not just an actress, but a filmmaker, author, film director, and producer. That's a lot of work when I read that. And she has produced 4 films, 2 of them, 2 feature films. One of them you had access to prior to this meeting, called Auf den zweiten Blick. It was made in 2013. And the last larger movie was Fenster Blau, and that is from 2017. So I'll give now the floor to the two ladies and look forward to their discussion. And again, in about 35 minutes or so, I will step in as a moderator and open it for the group as a whole. Didem.
Thank you.
Dankeschön. Also wir wollten auf Deutsch anfangen, ja?
Ah, okay. Ja.
Wir machen vielleicht die ersten 5 oder 10 Minuten auf Deutsch, damit die Studentinnen auch Deutsch als lebendige Sprache genießen können. Und also meine erste Frage wäre, und ich sollte auch sehen, es ist eine sehr große Freude, mit Ihnen über Ihren wunderschönen Film Auf den zweiten Blick sprechen zu dürfen. Also Sie sollten eigentlich bei uns in Atlanta sein und Sie hatten eine Menge Verabredungen in den USA zu dieser Zeit in Bezug auf die Tagung, die wir, also Women in German Tagung. Und jetzt treffen sie sich virtuell, aber trotzdem, sie treffen sich mit sehr vielen Germanistinnen und Studierenden in den USA. Und die Germanistik in den USA wird von den Germanistinnen in Europa als Auslandsgermanistik oft abgewertet. Aber die Auslandsgermanistik interessiert sich viel mehr für Themen wie die Migration, die Mehrsprachigkeit, die multikulturelle und transnationale Identität, Critical Race Studies und so weiter. Und deshalb werden Künstlerinnen wie zum Beispiel Yoko Tawada und Emine Sedgwick Özdemir einen sehr größeren Ruf in den USA als in Deutschland, wo sie kaum analysiert werden sind und genau, in der Deutschen Akademie haben sie weniger, ja, also werden sie weniger gelesen. Sehen Sie einen Unterschied in der akademischen und kritischen Rezeption und Anerkennung von Ihren Filmen in Deutschland und in den USA? Und wenn ja, warum glauben Sie, dass das der Fall ist?
Zuallererst erstmal danke für die Einladung. Freut mich sehr, wirklich. Das habe ich vorhin schon erzählt. Und also es freut mich wirklich sehr, dass der Film so gut angenommen wird. Und ich auch diese Chance habe, jetzt wirklich den Film zu zeigen und auch ein Stück Deutschland zeigen zu dürfen, was wir oft vermissen. Und also ich sehe da absolut einen Unterschied. Ich weiß jetzt nicht, wie divers jetzt die amerikanischen Akademiker und Akademikerinnen tatsächlich sind. Das konnte ich jetzt auf der Tour jetzt auch nicht ganz sehen, weil das wäre auch interessant zu wissen, findet da auch tatsächlich eine Diversität statt. Das heißt, innerhalb von Männer und Frauen, das heißt bezüglich auf Gender, aber auch bezüglich auf POCs ist es durchmischt. Das weiß ich jetzt nicht, weil das wäre auch sehr wichtig, weil hier im deutschen Raum ist es nicht durchmischt. Das heißt, man hat immer eine bestimmte Gruppe von Menschen, die Akademiker sind, sich gegenseitig die Türen öffnen und sich gegenseitig besetzen in den wichtigsten Posten. Das heißt, die Entscheider und die Gatewatchers, wie ich sie auch mal gerne nenne, kommen von einer Gruppe und dementsprechend sind natürlich die Geschichten, die wir aussuchen und die Geschichten, die wir erzählen und die Beispiele, die wir aussuchen und der Blick auf die Geschichte, auf die eigene Geschichte immer aus einer Perspektive. Weil ob es jetzt Geschichten aus dem Osten sind, es Geschichten aus der Vergangenheit, Historie zum Beispiel auch. Das heißt, es gibt ja auch schwarze Menschen und POCs, die natürlich in den 20er, 30er Jahren gelebt haben. Die deutschen Kolonien, die kaum reflektiert werden, die natürlich reflektiert werden müssen. Aber wenn es natürlich immer nur eine bestimmte Gruppe von Menschen sind, die sich, weil wir auch alle natürlich wissen, dass meistens die Gewinner die Geschichte geschrieben haben. Das heißt, meine Kinder haben zum Teil Geschichtsbücher, mit denen ich aufgewachsen bin, die ich lernen musste, jetzt in der Schule, die komplett veraltet sind und komplett in einer Zeit stecken geblieben sind, die gar nicht mehr mit unserer Zeit zu tun haben. Also das heißt, Geschichtsaufarbeitung und Geschichtsüberarbeitung und neue Perspektiven erzählen, das ist dringend notwendig. Ich glaube, in Deutschland wie aber auch in Amerika. Und deswegen ist es, um jetzt den Bogen zu meinem Film zu finden, glaube ich, hängt es damit zusammen, dass vielleicht mein Film jetzt in Deutschland, der ist ja sozusagen vor 10 Jahren, ich habe ihn 2010 realisiert, der hat nur so lange gebraucht, um ins Kino zu kommen, aber der ist 2010 gedreht worden, das heißt, ich habe ihn 2009, zwischen 2008 und 2009 geschrieben und versucht, zwischen 2009 und 2010 zu finanzieren. Ich war nicht in der Lage, einen Sender zu finden. Ich war auch nicht in der Lage, einen Verleih zu finden, was für deutsche Filmförderung ganz wichtig ist, dass man eines von den beiden hat auf seiner Seite. Und bis zum heutigen Tag ist Auf den zweiten Blick ein besonderer Film. Der läuft bis zum heutigen Tag nicht im Fernsehen, der läuft nicht in den deutschen Kinos, kaum noch mehr. Und der läuft auch zum Beispiel, was mich auch sehr überrascht und mich auch sehr gefreut hat, ist, das Goethe-Institut Amerika wesentlich mehr Interesse an Auf den zweiten Blick zeigt als Goethe-Institut Deutschland, wo ich mich dann frage, wieso? Wieso läuft Auf den zweiten Blick in Amerika in Universitäten? Das ist toll, weil Deutschunterricht, Geschichtsunterricht, das ist toll, dass Sie solche Filme auswählen, um den Studenten zu zeigen, dass es noch andere Realitäten gibt. Und wir müssen andere Realitäten kennenlernen, weil wir meistens ja doch alle in so einer Box leben, sage ich jetzt einfach mal. Wir leben in unserer Gegend, wir haben unsere Freunde, manchmal sind es diverse Freunde, manchmal aber auch nicht. Und Bücher, Filme, Geschichten, Begegnungen, die helfen uns, dass wir wirklich über unseren Horizont hinauswachsen und wirklich die Synapsen öffnen und Begegnungen zulassen und Geschichten zulassen und dadurch auch wachsen. Und wenn wir aber immer in der Schule dieselben Geschichten hören, dieselben Menschen sehen, dieselben Lieder hören oder auf den Bühnen dieselben Theaterstücke sehen und so tun, als gäbe es die andere Realität nicht, dann arbeiten wir mit einer Verblendung und auch mit einer Ausgrenzung. Und ich finde, dass das deutsche System noch zu sehr mit Verblendung und Ausgrenzung arbeitet, nach wie vor noch. Und das ist das, woran wir jetzt momentan, also viele Communities oder in Deutschland versuchen, sich zusammenzutun, um gegen diese Verblendung und Ausgrenzung anzuarbeiten, dass diese Monokultur, die hier stattfindet, einfach wirklich beendet wird.
Danke. Ich glaube, wir wechseln jetzt ins Englische. There are some students here in their first semester of German, so we want to also be inclusive of them. But thank you. That was such an important answer, and I want to assure and disappoint you that unfortunately things are still quite bad in the US too, in terms of not enough diverse representation, not enough critical understanding of our own history as a country, and not enough inclusion, not enough, all of the things that you mentioned. Unfortunately, those are also huge problems here. And we've seen this, of course, all summer, the very important movement for Black lives, that there is still not enough attention being paid to those issues in the US as well, not nearly enough, obviously. So, but I am glad to hear that, at least in terms of German studies, that your work is being viewed and analyzed and celebrated in the US, even though it's not finding the same resonance in German studies in Germany. So, okay, thank you so much. So, drawing on some of the themes that you just mentioned and referring now to your film, visual impairment was a really important aspect of this film, both in terms of its experience as a disability, but also in the way that it serves as a function of the film visually. Can you talk a little bit about visibility and visuality in this film, and how you set about making this theme apparent in the techniques that you used in the film?
Yes, I wanted to make a film, sorry. I wanted to make a film about sight because of just what the reason I just spoke about in German now. And because I wanted to show German reality on screen and on television. So therefore I had Kai as a main character becoming blind or getting blind. And through my research, I got to know all these different kind of visual impairments and all these grades and variety of seeing and not seeing. And that's the reason I decided not to write a drama. I decided to write to write more episode film or episodic film drama. Yes, and I think the same reason is because I think to see, not to see, and what you don't want to see is very important. So that was the theme for me for Auf den zweiten Blick. And because I also wanted the viewers to come in kind of way, I don't want to punch people into faces. I wanted them to kind of way feel free and at ease to get into the film and to get kind of know the characters, because I hate misrepresenting. And so I wanted to show all these various visual impairments with Pan, who's only able to see the outside. He can't see the focus. Or with Elena, who's kind of losing the focus. And with yes, with Kai too. Kai, who just, because most people think blind people see black, but they see kind of milky stuff, and that's what I wanted to show. So I wanted to bring the viewers into the views of the characters, or perspectives of the characters, yeah.
So thinking about visuality and visibility, there's a quote that I read recently that was about the L Word. I don't know if you're familiar with this television show. It's one of the first queer television shows.
Yeah. Yeah.
There was this wonderful quote that I read that says, visibility is a tricky thing. When someone visible when you can point her out in a crowd, or when you understand what her life feels like to her? So I guess my question is, what does visibility mean to you?
Yes. I think pointing out people, I don't like that, because pointing out people for me is always like a disrespect thing, because people shouldn't be pointed out. There's some people you kind of way feel like you would like to talk to, and some people you feel you don't like to talk to. So for me, it's visibility is part of equality, because I think if you're able to see everyone, you're able to choose, and you're also able to uh, to respect. And by pointing out means, because that's the first thing you learn as a child, not to point at people. And that's the thing I feel, if you point out people or human beings, it's you're not deep in this people, you're always just staying at a first glance, and you're not having a chance to go for a second glance or a third glance. So that's why it's not pointing out for me. I could point out a theme, yes.
So does that also relate to, and this is one of the questions that came up over the weekend at the conference, but that I thought was so interesting, the fact that visual impairment is thematized in the film, but race and Blackness are not explicitly thematized. Homosexuality, on the other hand, is explicitly thematized. So how did you go about selecting which themes were sort of presented as part of this complex, experience of discrimination, and other themes that were more normalized? What was the decision process for that?
Blackness wasn't thematized the way you thought or think it's not, because for me it was, because by showing Black actors and actresses in a normal life, everyday life, I did,
Right.
because that's what we do not see here. So, which means even the German audience is, when they saw my film, they said that that's a Black film. And I asked them, why is it a Black film? Because half of the characters are white and the other half are Black. So as soon as you see just like 2 or 3 Black actors and actresses in one film, you say it's a Black film. So that's already judging. So why do we also, and it's and the way someone says something or point out things, it goes into a negligent comment, which means it closes yourself to watch the film. You're not that open that you will be if you watch, I don't know, just a film full of mainstream characters. And so that's why I did it on purpose, because we're used to films with Black characters always playing the victims, always dealing with racism here in Germany. That's the only time when you see Black actors and actresses or characters on screen. And so I said, but beside my skin color or my skin tone, I'm also a woman, I'm also a mother, I'm also a lover, I'm also all these stuffs, and I hardly see this kind of issues. And with the homosexuality, it got harder when I was doing my research. And I think the difficulties I received doing the research in real life, because that was the hardest, that was the hardest string I received the most discrimination with, I would say. Even sometimes to find the crew members or also cast members. So that was very interesting, and I think it got hard. And then that time we had a gay major in Berlin. So all these negligent comments because of that too. I had the feeling I had to put it inside to make it, because people will say it's normal. It's already in the society. It's not a big thing anymore, but it's still a big issue. It's still, till today, it's still a big issue. I mean, you're lucky these days if you find, if you see homosexual stories, characters, or things, either acted by gay actors and actresses, or if they're just being told just in a normal way without pointing out, because they're always being pointed out. And the other thing is too, I mean, I have it too in my film, but we hardly see lesbians on film. in Germany. I don't know how it is with the States, but it's mainly we always have the men, but not the women. So that's another issue. But I also have men in my films. So I have to be quiet. But I also want to point it out too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So with a visual impairment, while I kind of put more focus on that too, is I did on purpose because I just wanted to show, even though we are all different, we're all from different backgrounds, living contexts, and from different communities, in a kind of way, we still receive similar discrimination from the mainstream. And that's what I also wanted to show. And I thought yes, and I made the decision to show it more on the visual impairment side and the gay side than on the Black side, yeah. Because I think the Black side already showed itself. I didn't have to point it out more, yeah.
We see that moment of slippage also between various forms of discrimination at the food kiosk, when that man says, oh, you know, the country's really going to hell, and he's talking about the gay couple that he sees.
Yeah.
But he's saying it, of course, to a Black man, and oftentimes that type of language is used for people who are perceived in Germany to be of migrant heritage or perceived to be of non-European origin. That language is often used as a way to say, hey, Germany is really going downhill because we have all of these foreigners here. But here it's used also for gay characters. So we see sort of that slippage there. So was it important for you to present discrimination in an intersectional way, where you have these various forms of identity that are all experiencing discrimination, you said, from the norm? Do you see that type of intersectional exploration of identity happening in German culture today?
Yes, I mean, you also see discrimination happening with Pia, because just the way Pia deals, even with Elena too. That's these are two characters I also wanted to show with it discrimination. But yes, it's still there. I mean, it's I don't know. I always say we live in the 21st century, but I always feel we are still stuck in the 19th century, because the way people, the picture of a female is still kind of stuck. Nothing changed, because those days females were just like had to be at home, look after the children, and they're not supposed to be working, or when they work, they're just doing not the work male were allowed to do. So you didn't have them in higher positions, or you didn't have them kind of way speaking up and loud, and it's the whole system is built on that, and it's still there. And so and even though still the whole system is still kind of way German system is not made for people like me, because I'm still not part of their system. I mean, I'm paying tax, so it's my right to be seen and heard. And I have to kind of waken German system up and say sorry, because even we built German too. It's not only the Germans, because who's German, by the way? I mean, if you go to each German family, even if you have people who looks white, who've got a white skin color, but they have family members too in their family coming to Germany. Because why do we have all these Zelinskis here? Why do we have all this Botvich here? Why do we have all these Bertrand here? Which means these are French names, these are Polish names, these are Czech names, these are from Bosnia names, which means these are all from Austria names. These are all people who came to Germany, and just because they've got the white skin color means they're German, and if you don't have the white skin color, you're not German. And that's the thing we're talking about now. It's an issue in Germany, and we have to rethink, and we have to bring back history into classes, because I think from the kindergarten, people, the stories have to be different. The stories we tell to the children when they're in a small age, they have to be diverse. They're not diverse. And then if you go to school, what kind of books are we using to teach? What kind of films are we showing to teach? What kind of teachers do we have? How do the teachers look? Do we have male and female? Is it parity? Paritätisch? And do we have people of color too teaching? That's very important because we need role models. If you don't see yourself as a kid, then you think you do not exist, and that's bullshit. So, and that's why we're still working on a lot of things here.
Co-sign everything you just said. That was, it is bullshit. And I'm glad to see that with artists such as yourself, things are changing. You said over the weekend, you said a really beautiful quote. When I open my door and go for a walk, I see so much diversity, but I don't see this on the screen or stage.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see this as changing? And if so, why do you think it's changing? And if not, what do you think it will take for this to actually change, for this diversity that you are seeing all around you in German society to actually be reflected in the cultural landscape?
I mean, what is changing now is on screen and in literature, and also in interviews, because suddenly all the stations kind of way are inviting Black voices to speak up, but mostly just to speak about racism and discrimination, to say, how do you feel? How was it with you? What was your pain? So that's not going to change. And on screen, you see more POCs on screen too, but that's not going to change either. So, um, and I think what woke Germany up was, of course, the lynching of George Floyd, we all witnessed. And because of these, everyone has the feeling they have to do something in order not to be called racist or because they're discriminating others. So everyone's trying to be diverse in their with their characters on screen, but the content is not changing, and behind the scenes is not changing. So if we don't have diverse content to take this people's stories serious, if you don't show different stories, because different, I mean, just look the way we are so different, the way we're all here now listening, they were coming from so different kind of living contexts and backgrounds. So if you don't show these different backgrounds and living contexts and needs, nothing is going to change. There's not going to be justice because it's only going to be for the mainstream. And if the gate watchers and the broadcasters and the decision makers are all the same, nothing's going to change. And that's the thing, because on screen and in literature, some literature is open, but it's only literature dealing with racism and discrimination. But I also like to read novels, just, I mean, a simple thriller, a simple love story, simple, I don't know. Why don't we have it here from the Black side? Why only from the Black side if it deals with racism or discrimination? Because I don't want to deal with discrimination, racism every day. I'm sorry if I want to switch the television on, or I just want to enjoy the film, or just enjoy the book without kind of ways, again, having punches into my face because of my skin tone. I don't want this. So it's possible on the other side, but not for POCs. And that's what needs to change, because we need diversity in public, in the staff, in program, and in the audience.
Yeah, I as a Turkish Arab person in German studies who works a lot on Turkish German issues, sometimes I was actually challenged by a former mentor of mine who said I couldn't work on a particular text because it didn't show the Betroffenheit well enough, and the person wasn't, the author who created it was too educated for me to work on her. And that's, of course, nonsense, right? So I switched mentors at that point.
Yeah.
But there is this expectation to always have to perform the violence that's being done from society in some visible ways. That also goes back to the idea of visibility and trauma, and how that is sort of has to be performed in a way that's legible for the mainstream society in order to sort of be understood. And yeah, so I feel you there.
Yeah, well, the two words are totally right. It's schlechte Gewissen und Betroffenheit. And these are the two things I can't stand anymore in German society, because I'm sick of this Betroffenheit. I'm sick of this schlechte Gewissen. It's not changing anything. It's just like keeping me in a box and keeping the other person in a box. And what we need is justice and equality, just really to see each other and Betroffenheit and schlechtes Gewissen is not going to change anything.
Yeah, because that also takes the onus off of the people who are creating the racism, right?
Right.
It always puts the blame on the people who are affected by it rather than
Yes, absolutely.
people who are producing it. So I had a totally different type of a question, and we'll get away maybe from some of these themes a little bit. Berlin, we talked about Berlin. We love Berlin. Berlin in the winter is a very tough place to be for a lot of people. And you had said that it was almost accidental that you set the film in Berlin in the winter because it was just cheaper with with the actors and with the people that you were working with. So financing worked out well. But you have this really amazing contrast between the stark and cloudy and snowy Berlin, and then this very warm, affective experience of the characters coming together. So could you just talk a little bit about how you see emotion playing a role in this film, emotion and environment as being in sort of a reciprocal relationship?
I think it's not only for this film, because I think good films and good stories have to be emotional. They have to have emotion. So I can't imagine a film or a story without emotion. Then it's I don't know. Then it's a lecture. But even a lecture has to have emotion too, because but you build emotional lectures differently than in films and in literature. So I don't know. For me, it's part of the story, because good stories have to be honest, they have to be visual, and they have to have emotion. And so I don't know. I think a strength of voice in a story is very important, and that's what I'm always looking for: strength of voice in my stories, and especially relating to the themes I choose for the stories or for the films. And maybe because of these, with the winter, with the isolation, with the coldness, and then the warmth inside the house, because that's what I experienced. Especially, it's always like a cage, or like a cave. I mean, I'm not a cage, a cave. In winter, if you houses, especially because all the lives are inside, happening inside, and people kind of try to build their homes like small caves with candles, and if you're lucky to have a fireplace, they put on the fireplace, or they invite people to have okay, we drink here in Europe. I know in America you don't drink. Have a glass of wine. And just to sit together and have dinner together and enjoy life inside. So I was experienced the lights and the colors in winter in Berlin of homes differently than in summer. And because yes, and that's what I want. I was also playing with a film too, because you see the red is really kind of a earth dark red, like with a sofa Kai is sitting on, or you can see the Benjamin has got a lot of warm yellow lights, kind of a sandy tones, or greenish too. And yeah, so I like to play with colors, and the opposite was outside, always kind of a grayish, muddy, white too, because of the snow. And yes, yeah.
Great. I think I'll ask one last question and then we'll open it up for the audience, if that's okay. I have other questions too, but I'm sure we have many from the audience. So thinking also about Berlin, there are so many iconic films that are set in Berlin. I'm sure you've seen so many of them. We all have. And choosing to set a film in Berlin, there are sometimes particular expectations of buildings or particular areas of Berlin that are depicted. So were there any visual references from iconic films that you wanted to replicate, or that you specifically wanted to avoid because you're like, oh man, that's been done a million times?
I mean, I still have two, I think. I think I've got Brandenburger Tor in my film too, and I've got Alexanderplatz too in the film, which I wanted to avoid, but then we tried to use an angle which is not so pointed out. So
it was subtle. It was subtle as far as Berlin films go. Very subtle compared to most.
Yes, but I still wanted to show more the districts of Berlin. I was interested, more interested in that, to show more the district, because the characters live in this district and to show these different phases of Berlin and how people cope in these different districts and how diverse they are too. Because I live, for instance, in Charlottenburg, which is a totally different district than where Herr Meyer lives in Kreuzberg. And it's got a different vibe too, and also brutality too sometimes too. So I wanted to show these different phases of Berlin. And yeah, so that I was more into districts than into buildings and sightseeing tours.
Absolutely. And I think for people who live in Berlin, they can definitely relate to that more
Yeah.
subtle sort of depiction of Berlin. So I really
Yeah.
love that. It made me miss Berlin so much.
Oh, beautiful. Thank you. Berlin is happy.
Oh, yeah, I just welcome questions from our audience here.
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you so much for the excellent questions and excellent and helpful answers, Sheri. And it's quite a compliment if Didem says she misses Berlin so much, even though you show Berlin in winter. That's
Yes,
quite an
that's true.
achievement.
Yeah.
Quite an achievement, I have to say. Yeah, we opened up to questions, so you can post those in the chat, and maybe I'll start with, take the privilege as a moderator to have one question for you, and that is, you mentioned the difficulties of distributing your movie to regular film distribution or even on TV, which surprises me to some degree since you have such a presence on German TV and must know the network quite well, or relatively well. Can you explain maybe that kind of like, on the one hand, you have a certain presence, or not certain, you have a presence on German TV, and then at the same time, you as a producer are sidelined and kind of taken out of the network that you mentioned earlier.
To be honest, I don't really know how to answer this question because it's also a huge question for me too, because I still do not understand it till today, why it's so difficult to receive funding. It's not only for me, it's just like even because I think the film funding system in Germany is rotten, it needs to be rebuilt because it keeps so many outside. It excludes more people than engage or embrace people, because it's everyone who kind of wants to tell diverse stories, or not only because of skin color, but diverse stories, just also in the independent stories. It's if you want to tell artistic stories, it's really hard because they're so focused so much on mainstream. And even the script writing is just reduced to some group of viewers, and you ask yourself why? Because I think it's because I think diverse stories, if we open up, it's really it's good for the economic, and it's good for the identity too. So what we're doing now is just like we're just keeping a lot of viewers outside. That's why they're all going to the streaming services, because they're trying to find their films there, because German television and German film is not showing it because they're not using their creative talents they have. And I really don't know, because the broadcasters and the gate watchers, what I also like to call them, they're all kind of maybe too old sometimes. I don't even know why, and they're just like moving their chairs from one position to the next position, and they choose what they know, because everyone has their own kitchen. They kind of cook with their own spices, I say. So if you used to use one spice every day to make your soup, and then suddenly someone says, no, take a different spice, it's really difficult for you unless someone forced you to do that. And I think the film funding system has to have diversity written down in the law to force people use diversity in their content, in the characters, and behind the scenes. Otherwise, nothing is going to change, because if the law says you have to do that in Germany, then people do it. If the law doesn't say it, they don't do it. So we need the law, the film funding system, to kind of have diversity written down for each film which receives funding. And otherwise, nothing's going to change, because me myself, I hardly watch German television. I also hardly watch German movies because I always see the same characters, I always nearly see the same content. And I go to England, I go to the States, I go to France, and these are kind of way the filmmakers which are inspiring me, and I find more brave, or even Scandinavia. So it's more things happening there than here. And yeah, so I don't really know why. I don't know. I still, there's a fear, and I don't understand this fear because I'm always asking myself, what are they afraid of?
And how do you square that then, that you're also on demand for movie productions? Are you there for them just the Quotenfrau, so to speak, for the
Ah,
other?
ich will keine Quotenfrau sein.
No,
No.
but I mean, so at the same time, German TV, you obviously have a successful career there. So
No, I may be some pessimistic. I mean, I had the honor to work with great directors too. I mean, like Uwe Jansson, he's a wonderful director who did like Baal, and I played in Baal. I played a character in Baal, which normally people won't cast with me. You know, they would cast someone else, but not someone who looks like me. And also with Brahman Opako, you maybe know her because she's also a colleague from you, of you. And so they're wonderful directors there. I mean, if you come from the Turkish side or you've got Turkish background, I mean, you know Fatih Akin, of course. He was very, very important for the German-Turkish community. I mean, they got that strong because of Fatih Akin, because he was the one who kind of just did his films the way he did them, and he was very successful with that too, which is very important. I wasn't very successful with auf den zweiten Blick in Germany with the audience, because if you don't have a strong distributor on your side in Germany, then when you're lucky, you're going to be like out in the theaters for 1-2 weeks and then you're gone. And if you don't have a broadcast on your side, then you're not going to be, no one's going to show you on televisions, which means if you don't have the viewers, the amount of viewers, then they just said, oh, no one is interested. But I always ask myself, because the budget we have from the independent side, we always work with little money. If you compare the budget we have, and if you compare the budget the mainstream have, and sometimes the mainstream also do really bad, but no one speak about that. No one speak about what they lose, because they lose much more than we do. But what we lose is always kind of eating all of the funding. And I'm saying, I'm not eating the funding because I didn't even receive funding. So what am I eating up? So, and that's kind of very interesting. But you're right, we need more people like filmmakers like Fatih Akin, who are strong in the artistic telling those ways of telling stories, but also strong in speaking up, because he was also one of the few directors who spoke up, who didn't stay silent, who kind of also react in public and said what he thinks. And most people do not do that too, which is very important. So that's why he did a lot for the German-Turkish community. Yeah.
He also made a very good film featuring a lesbian couple, Auf der anderen Seite.
Yeah.
One
Yes.
beautiful,
Yeah. Yes, he did. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
at this point, I encourage our students, all my colleagues, to pose a question.
We have a question from Caroline.
Yes.
Oh, about the Schneematsch. Oh. Oh, I see. Carolina asked the question, was it a conscious choice to depict Berlin as its worst weather in constant Schneematsch?
I mean, with the Schneematsch, to be honest, I was always afraid the snow is going to be, because those days, everyone would have said you're crazy to shoot in winter and to start shooting with snow, because if you're not lucky, the snow is gone the next day, because and then you have to, of course, if you start with snow, the snow has to stay, you know. You can't have one picture or you can't start one picture in snow and then and continue without snow. So I was praying every night for snow, and I was lucky to receive snow, and the snow stayed. But to be honest, I miss the snow, because we don't have this kind of snow in Berlin anymore. It's just like, you know, our environment is changing. So we hardly have snow in Berlin now, so it's always good to see what we used to have. I hope I didn't misunderstand the question.
No,
Okay.
and you answered it in a different way earlier, in the sense that you said it had also to do with the lack of funding, and therefore having
Yes.
all the actors
Yeah.
and
Yeah. Yeah.
film
Yeah.
crews available during that time. Here's another question from my colleague also about the weather. And Max, is that a question or more a comment?
Ag-
Both?
oh, Again, I didn't get it.
More comment, yeah. Like that despite the weather, you show Berlin that people are actually active, they play soccer, they have
Inside, everything's happening inside.
oh, this is scene where they played outside on the playground.
Yes, you're right. Yeah, the kids. Kids always love to play outside. It doesn't matter what's happening outside. If it's raining, they would love to go out too. Yeah.
Mhm.
Would it be
Okay.
possible to unmute?
No, that's not possible. No, sorry. That's part of the setup that we focus on this choices. Any other question that students might want to post, either in regard to the film or to the larger issues that Sheri Hagen addressed? Okay, if that is
I would be
other,
always
then
interested.
okay, I have another question
Yes.
for you.
Yeah.
When, despite the lack of funding about which you complain, is there, do you have plans for another film project in the relatively near future? And if so, will it be influenced by the most recent political social events, right, that we have seen in this country, that is the Black Lives Matter movement, or what other topic that fascinates that you would like to produce?
Yes, I've got 2 films coming up, and one received script grant, which was beautiful. But the next one I would like to do is Billy. It's about 2 women, 2 Black women, mothers who want to change their life. And it's also dealing with restrictions and also dealing with police violence, but not in a way you maybe think it is now it's happening in the States, but of course, because it's also happening in Germany. And also the fear of a Black person, because also here you've got the fears of a Black person. If you're out here in the streets, even me, if my son goes out to party night, I also kind of always ask him to call me when he's back, or to call me when he arrives, or especially if he goes to the east side, because East Berlin is still a fear there too, as a mother, as a Black mother with Black children. So because we do know how police deal with people of color youngsters, or with youngsters of color, and it's a different way than they deal with youngsters who are just white, or who looks white, or who looks for them biological German. And so the fear is there, and I'm using this fear also with the 2 mothers who wants to change their life and ended up in a bank, being suspected of being bank robbers.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. And that's, I mean, the theme of this film is not police violence. Police violence is just part of the film. The theme of the film I'm really dealing with is domestic violence in Billy. But it's also showing a reality we also have here, which is similar to the States with the police violence, because we also have a lot of right-wing police, people in the police, and we also have people dying in police custody, and we need to, it has to be mentioned, we need to lighten it up. And there's also been demanding from to have a data collection on police, to see how right or how racist or not racist the police is. And our in minister, our interior minister, Mr. Seehofer, is always kind of way trying to avoid it. And everyone's asking themselves why, because you have every day there's an action with the police. And it's even evidence from police officers being part of the right-wing side. So that's a big issue here too. And the other film I'm going to do, which I received script funding, is Motherhood, which is dealing with surrogacy, because I'm also interested in reproduction, because just the idea of families, who's allowed to be mother, who's not allowed to be a mother, who's allowed to have a child, who's not allowed to have a child, and what kind of effort do we need to do for children, because I was lucky, but some other people weren't so lucky than I was. So I'm dealing with that issue. Yeah.
And I didn't want to cut you off, but I think you had a question for us.
Yes, I was kind of also interested in, especially if you watch the film, in which from the 6 figures, or even not 6 figures, from the figures you related with, which one kind of hit you, or which one you would say you could go with, or which one was your favorite, or which one made you think, or kind of reflect you more. Yeah, so I don't know if someone would like to say something to that. That would be beautiful, just to know which couple is kind of your favorite couple, or which figure kind of hit you. Yeah.
For me, my favorite figure is Ulf.
Ah.
And I can see myself sometimes as Ulf, because I sometimes break tension with comedy. That's one of the roles that I have with my friends. So he has this really, he's a wonderful character. So I can't say that I'm like Ulf, because that would be bragging, right? I'm not like Ulf. I wish I could be like Ulf. He's awesome. And the way that he speaks in the film with this very flowery language and very, very formal and sort of like overdone language is just so wonderful. I love it. Amazing. But he of course has a very tragic ending too, so it's interesting to see how this very lighthearted character then gets, you know, unwittingly dragged into something that is so tragic.
Can you see the question by our colleague Frank Vogt, Sheri?
No, I'm just going to open it now. Let me see. Yeah.
It's basically here.
I need to read.
The end. It would be interesting to know how others have seen this relationship, especially he writes. My impression was that the developing relationship is somewhat passing each other by, because they are not really interested in talking to each other, but rather by their daughter Carla is developing the relationship.
Yeah.
Do you want to comment on that? Between Kai and Falk?
Yes, that's their line, because she's kind of trying to run away from him, because she feels him as a stalker at the beginning, because she's still kind of locked up in her own trauma, and is not really open yet, open for a new relationship, open to come out of her cave. She's kind of still self-pitying herself, in a hard way to say. And Carla is needed. Carla is very important for the two, because Carla is the door opener. Because I think without Carla, she wouldn't be able to open up to Falk. So in kind of way, he needed his child, and he kind of, without thinking, but instinctively, intuitively, he used also his daughters to get to Kai. So that's why, and they're always kind of you're right, they're not really talking to each other. The only time they really talk to each other is after when Carla falls asleep. But even then, she needs to be there and able to open up and to go and to deepen. Yeah. Because I was experienced that too, that sometimes you have a relationship to someone, but you kind of always have the feeling sometimes you're just passing each other, and you're not really kind of you feel connected, but it's not like you're speaking sometimes the same language, and you need kind of way to find your bridge to meet and to speak the same language. Yeah.
What struck me on a side note was that I don't know her name, the character in the name, the couple that kind of grew apart from one another. He's the art dealer, and his wife, who also couldn't see well, but you leave her out the most, even though she is, how should I say, she has a heavy load to carry. Not only she can't see so well, but then also, you know, has to cope with the marriage crisis and the fallout.
Yeah.
And she, you know, I'm since you showed the others, I could see how they were developed. For her, I was kind of curious what should happen to her, with her, who she is. There was a little bit left unanswered. That makes me
Yes,
curious.
I mean, I think all the second characters in the second line, I would say, they're all a bit unanswered, because if it's Mr. Meyer, if it's Antje, if it's even this ugly shop seller, this Imbissbudenbesitzer, they all have something in them which I kind of way just show in 1-2 scenes and then keep it that way, because I believe I don't like to work with explanations, and I also like to work with fantasy, because I think these 2 scenes, you know, the way she's going to carry on, move on, it's even going to be a bigger burden on her shoulders than it used to be before, and she's going to need maybe many doors to cope. Because I wanted to show the loneliness and the togetherness with Kai and Till and Antje. Because as a couple, because I think you can also be married to someone, or you can have a partner, or you can live together with someone and still be lonely, but lonely in a bad way. Because just the way Kai and Falk are coming together, they are just like going apart. Yeah, but they're not brave enough to say that and to do something against it, or to change something. They're kind of way still stuck in their relationship. Yeah.
And the only thing that changes that is the catalyst for their relationship finally breaking apart is her seeing it for the first time. Her seeing them engaging in this.
Yeah, she has to face facts. Because that's what I'm saying too, because what you can see, what you want to see, and what you don't want to see. And she didn't want to see all these, because she noticed, even with the pram in the flat which is there, and even the way he kissed her when he just leaves. So I mean, all these things she noticed already. You can see it in her face, but still, there's still hope. Every day it's gonna change, you know. And I just had to watch Breaking Bad for some other section, and I enjoyed the first episode of Breaking Bad, and I just remembered, even though, because that's what I have to think now with a relationship, because I have to think of the relationship with Walter and his wife, and just to see this too, the first scene when she's in bed and he's lying beside her, she's on the computer, and they're trying to have sex, but it's just in such an odd way. And then the next, in 2 or 3 episodes, then you see the way they have sex, because his path, his life changed, so he's able, and that's what makes things interesting, just by visualizing stories and telling, and also with a relationship, because in some small things you can show a whole relationship. You don't need explanations for that, but you really can picture relationships by the way someone holds someone touches someone speaks to someone, and then you know what's going on. Yeah.
Okay, if I don't see any other question, Caroline Schaumann writes that she also liked the soccer playing mom. I agree. It looked like for a moment that there would be some dating going on, but and it didn't happen. That's how life works, unfortunately. But
Benjamin too, yes. Benjamin and his imaginary friends, yes. Yeah.
Right, exactly. That's Max's comment, you're right.
Yeah.
I want to close by thanking you very, very much. Sheri Hagen, for joining us in the discussion. And I hope, even though that the students were, so to speak, quiet. There's one of our students agreed that we need more films. All right, okay. Thank you, Kyle.
Thank
Yeah, I want
you.
to thank you. And I should point out that Sheri Hagen will be in our neighborhood tomorrow. She will be with our colleagues at UGA in Athens, Georgia, which is about an hour and a half drive, a little over an hour drive from Atlanta. She will, yep, she will be there tomorrow for another discussion. Originally, the whole plan was last year. We actually started planning this event today, about roughly a year ago. And the plan was she would be at the conference for women in German this past weekend, then come to our campus, then move on to Athens campus. All of that obviously had to be rearranged, but we are very thankful and grateful that you took the time to join us today, and we wish you luck with your next production. Hopefully they wake up in Germany and put more to you. And hopefully one day we will see you actually live in person on campus. Okay.
Yes. Thank you so much also for
Yeah.
watching my film and for inviting me again. Really, thank you.
Thank you, Sheri.
Thank you. Alles Gute. And thanks everybody for joining.
Yeah. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.